Well, I want to thank everybody for coming on my podcast. Today we have a special guest, Mike and Jody Voorhees, and they are victims of their accounts being frozen and just how it turns everything upside down. And so I wanted to have them on my podcast to talk about this. And Jody, why don't you go ahead and introduce your guys and tell us what happened?
Yeah, so we started day trading
Mm-hmm.
in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were, was it 2021?
Well, kind of, but mostly 2022.
Mostly 2022, I
Okay.
guess. Mostly 2022, and had some really great mentors and exceeded my expectations and the skills that I was able to acquire in day trading.
Mm-hmm.
And had built up a pretty substantial account at first when we first started our account.
Mm-hmm.
And being new to the industry and getting some advice that I look back, maybe I would have done differently.
Mm-hmm.
But initially had opened up a brokerage account in the Cayman Islands.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's a PDT rule, which just allows you to only trade a certain amount of times in a week
Mm-hmm.
with a PDT rule. And so they didn't have that rule, but they cooperate with the U.S. government as far as taxes and can have U.S. Citizens as clients.
Right.
And so things were going fine, and we were doing well, and we were able to I pulled out some money from the brokerage. We received the wires just fine. Initially pulled out, I think, the $12,000 wire, and then like a $10,000 wire, and then they had a rule that we were just needing, at that point we just closed our business down, and so we were relying on that as our primary income. And there was an approval process, but they told us that if we had less than $10,000, that approval process would go faster. And so we started pulling out some wires that were just kind of regular wires, and we did 5 transactions that were $3,000, $3,000, $3,000, $3,000. And all we can surmise, because we've never really received any official notice as to what's happened, is that we got hit with some suspicious activity reports with the money coming out of the Cayman Islands, with it being a $12,000, a $10,000, and then $3,000, $3,000, $3,000, $3,000 for a total of $15,000. The $10,000 wire and the $12,000 wire, we got those fine. The $3,000 wires, all of a sudden the brakes were just hit, and we stopped getting those wires. Nobody could tell us why or what was going on. They would just say, we sent it, we did tracers or trackers or whatever. They said they sent them. At that point, it was just after COVID, and there was a lot of COVID. There was a lot of COVID fraud, and that we had looked at and had felt like maybe that the Bank in London had flagged some of those as some fraudulent type of wires or whatever. So from there, we, I was like, well, if we don't get the money out of the Cayman Islands, at least I learned how to trade, and I'm just going to open up a brokerage account in the U.S. And so I opened up a brokerage account in the U.S. And started trading options. And because I had done well, I had been able to build that account quite rapidly again. And initially received a couple of wires from them, and then they told me that there was some sort of obscure error code that they couldn't process any of our withdrawals anymore. until they got it figured out. At first, there was an internal. They were doing a whole clearinghouse internal thing, and they kept saying that was the issue why we weren't getting our money. But then, when it became apparent that that wasn't the reason that we weren't getting our money, they just said that there was some error code, and to this day, we still haven't been able to pull any of those funds. And so, for us, it's been pretty emotional.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult situation because you call the banks and you get a hold of all these people and you're just constantly on there. And as soon as it seems like, like, well, let me figure it out, give us 3 to 5 business days. And so you give them that time, and then all of a sudden they just disappear on you. Like they quit talking to you, and they won't give you any more answers. They won't answer your emails anymore where they were talking to you. So then you find somebody else, and then you get the same runaround. And we've done that for exactly a year. It seems like right after the Inflation Reduction Act is
that's when it started.
That's when it started. And now the only thing we can think of is that it's a suspicious activity report, but no, we've never been notified. We it doesn't matter what we do, we obviously know how to make money and make it quick.
Right.
Brokerage. So if we we tried opening up a different way of doing it, and then that one's blocked from getting money, and then and so we've done that for a year now, just trying to figure out, but it just recently, kind of like after all the research we've done, we know it's probably a SAR report that got flagged, but there's it's really hard to figure out when they do that to you.
Right. So what bank is it? What is it? U.S. bank?
That was part of, I think, one of the issues is that we had it. We had just opened up a new bank account. We had just opened up a new bank account. And so those wires were going into different bank accounts than just one bank account. So it was going to multiple banks.
Right.
That we think probably triggered it. In addition to that, and this is all speculation.
Right.
We had a hemp processing plant, so we were in the cannabis industry as our business. Processing hemp, everything was done, with the Department of Agriculture in Oregon, but we were in the cannabis industry.
Right.
So, you just kind of wonder, did that get a flag? Did this get all these little things that just start adding up.
But it was Navy Federal Credit Union that we feel like.
It was Navy Federal Credit Union at first. We also, Capital One Bank. All of them have told us that there wasn't an issue with our account, and we never, they didn't actually ever freeze our bank accounts for whatever money that was in there. As far as Venmo or something like that. It was money that was coming out of the brokerages that has been.
So you said you said that you formed your own brokerage here in the U.S.?
No, we just opened up a brokerage account.
Okay. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Was that in your individual name, or was it through an entity of some kind, or?
It was on our name again because we didn't think that was an issue. We just thought it was a problem with the Cayman Islands, and we're like, okay, let's just do it. But then once we started realizing that we were having more issues with that brokerage, and and that's part of how we came to come across your name and what you're doing is as we've done more research, trying to figure out how to do it more out of an entity versus in our personal name, and if we can do it in. It seems to me like what I've seen on your webinar that it's more of a contract law.
Yes.
Contract law business trust.
Yes.
Is what it seems like you're recommending. For people to kind of really take seriously before the end of the year and do that. And so that's kind of how we, as we've been researching everything that we can possibly research, nobody's been able to give us any solid answers. The banks can't give us answers, brokers won't give us answers, and the more we research, they say that when there's a SAR report, that they won't give you answers until they're done with whatever sort of investigation. But the only revenue the only money that we had that was coming was from the trades that I was doing, and I wasn't using any sort of bot or it was me actively making the trade for the day. But, okay. We did go from relatively paycheck to paycheck, not really having money, to me learning a skill that allowed me to make money that we've never made before. So all of a sudden now we're trying to transfer money that isn't typical for us. And so I think just a combination of all of that is what we're fighting right now. We've gone everywhere from filing a report with the Office of Foreign Asset Control to unblock funds, but not being processed yet. We're kind of in the line to see. We don't even know if that's what we needed to do.
Have you had anybody from the government yet approach you as far as starting any kind of an investigation? You're just in limbo, right?
Yeah, it's been a year exactly.
It's been a year. It's been a year. We haven't had anything. As I was trying to figure it out, I was on the phone with the IRS. I made an appointment with our local IRS office. When I explained our situation, they looked at me like I had 5 heads. They didn't know what I was talking about. They said, "We don't see anything. I don't know what's going on." So I couldn't see anything with them, but I've tried calling FinCEN. I've tried calling, the Department of Treasury, but with just automated phone lines, I can't get a hold of anybody, and I don't get any emails returned. So
this is exactly what I've been warning people about, and I admire your courage to come on and be open about this, because the level of denial is so high right now in our society. They don't know this stuff happens and is going to happen more and more. Because you're absolutely right. They are not required to say anything about a suspicious activity report. And when they put the hammer down, this is what happens. And it's just terrifying that this happens this way.
I mean, it's caused us to have to max out our credit cards, and it's damaged our credit.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, the most part that's really frustrating because you just can't get any answers.
Yeah.
That's the biggest part of this whole thing. And it really made me open my eyes up. I figured all along, if you have your money and you can do what you want with your money, and that's not the case.
Yeah.
Like you've got to
or even if
yourself right now.
Even if you have this naive idea that, okay, I'm earning money, I will pay my taxes on it, and you still got slammed. Yeah. Just because somebody, either a bot or an employee or both, decided that was unusual, and that was it.
Yeah.
No explanation.
Feels like it was some sort of an AI, like we just got flagged in an automatic system, because I don't think that, given I can pull my brokerage statements, I can show every single trade that's been made, that it was legitimate, but I haven't had the opportunity to show that. To get the money unblocked, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's blocked right now. And so that's been difficult for us, for sure. And trying to navigate now how to continue doing what I'm doing without going and getting a normal, a 9-to-5 job when I can generate income through the day trading. But if I can't access it, I can't.
Yeah, and I understand where you're coming from. It's just shocking. It's terrifying what's happening here. And these are the landmines that people don't see what's happening. I mean, there has been a precipitous rise in SAR reports in the last 2 years. I mean, they're soaring above. I mean, I think we're estimate. From what I've been able to research, they could get close to 3 million this year. And they broke 2 million last year, easy, on this, and it just keeps going and going and going. And with the fact that they're being weaponized in a lot of ways by FinCEN, authorized, encouraged, trained to go to look at these types of transactions. And I read somewhere where that before you'd be fine if you kept it under $10,000 per wire. But now the bots have been trained to look for exactly what you did was to go for the 2 or 3 in a row, multiple, so it looks to the bot, it looks like that's that you're trying to get around it.
Just trying to go.
Exactly.
You're trying to hide your $10,000 or whatever.
Exactly.
You have to limit.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And
that's where we figured when we started researching that that's what's happened. That's what led us to the SAR report. Yep. But then it's, you call, we just call lawyers and they keep referring us to somebody else and nobody wants to even touch it.
Right. Yeah.
So. And
it's hard to pay lawyers if your money's frozen.
Yeah, exactly.
And all of the brokerages, are also part of the Anti-Money Laundering Act, to where if they see anything that they feel is suspicious, which it wasn't, but, I don't know, I have a knack for trading.
You're too good.
And
yeah, he's aggressive, so she can make a lot of money quickly, and so, yeah, that's where we stand today. Not knowing how long it takes to get, unblocked, or how you
or if you ever will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we ever will, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to be the voice of gloom and doom here, but you see how this works, and I get people saying, we have due process in this country. It's like, yeah, you sure about that? I had
not on this, no.
Yeah, not here. Because we're getting a money laundering.
We haven't been notified at all.
Yeah. And that's the thing about money.
The brokerages and the banks can't and don't tell us anything. When they look at it, as far as the person on the phone, maybe somebody in the higher ups in the, in the compliance department or, something like that sees it. But the people that we're able to talk to, they don't see any issues and they're confused. They're as confused as we are of what they're seeing. They're just like, go ahead and try to wire. Like, there's no blocks on your account. You can receive X amount of wires in a day and, you should be fine. And then it doesn't ever show up.
Right.
So then we stop trying because then it's just like, are we digging ourselves into a bigger hole?
Right.
Until we figure out what really needs to happen.
Right. Yeah, I'm so sorry this happened. I really am.
Yeah, well, it definitely makes you open your eyes, and now people need to research and really figure out how to deal with all this stuff.
Right.
It just sounds like it's getting worse and worse and worse, and that's why I kind of came across you because you're educating people on this, and it is very, very important to figure out how to do it right.
And to exempt yourself for the most part from this stuff, because
now we're worried whether we, with the Corporate Transparency Act, if we have it under a corporate entity, does it get tied back to us to where if we open it under a corporate entity, does that get blocked? Or, we're trying to navigate right now how to move forward, even if everything that I did in the last, year, really 2 years worth of work, even if that is all for naught, how do I move forward? That's a lot of our questions right now, because if I can figure out a way to move forward and be able to, have it under a corporate entity. I'm not trying to hide any of the money. I'm not trying, if the minute it opens up, it's like, okay, what, you want 50%? Okay, take 50%. I'm not carrying the taxes. We're not trying to, create any kind of tax loophole or anything like that. We're just, we absolutely were going to pay taxes. In fact, we've always joked with our family members because they're like, oh, you're making so much money, you're going to have to pay so much taxes. I'm like, I'm so glad and finally in my life that I have to worry about how much taxes I'm having to pay.
Right.
Because it actually means that we're making money. And, so now we're just trying to figure out moving forward, do we set it up into a, the exact business structure, that so many of us are never taught of what we can actually do, protect ourselves and protect the assets and be able to have access to the money that we're making and, and file taxes on their corporate entity.
How's it been? Do you have any kids? Do you have, what's your...
Yeah, we have 3 adult children.
Adult children, okay. All right.
We have 3 adult children that, just with the way the economy is, they, for the most part have lived at home. Oh. They're starting to move out now, or, they have 26 and 23 and youngest is 20. But it's definitely made them fearful about how their future's going to look and, distrusting of what they can do financially and, concerned that we actually did something wrong, that we, no, we didn't do anything wrong. We just,
they felt like you must have done something wrong for this to happen, right? Yeah. Yeah. That's the issue, right? Because we still tend to have this inherent trust that as long as you do what's right and you don't, it's okay if something happens to someone, it must have been their fault, right? Because why would the government go after you if it wasn't your fault? And yet what's being built is designed to fail. The landmines are out there, and there's going to be so much collateral damage. You guys are collateral damage of what has been being built. It started with the Patriot Act. If we go back to it, and I like to refer to it as the bull in the China shop syndrome, where they're trying to root out money laundering, and I'm completely in support of that. But how many dishes are being broken? How many lives are being broken, are going to be broken in greater percentage as they get going on this? And is it worth it? We don't, time will tell if it's worth it or not. But for people who are like yourselves who are being impacted directly, you're just collateral damage. And I think that's kind of what's in the calculations of the decisions. It's like, well, it's acceptable in some way, right? As long as the goal is achieved, right? Well, there's casualties in warfare. There's going to be casualties, and I fear that that's a lot of the attitude that's been going on in the last few years in passing this legislation, preparing the legislation, and then setting up the infrastructure to enforce it. I used to have. I was in the mortgage industry. I was a licensed mortgage broker. And we always had continuing education about suspicious activities. We were trained on how to file suspicious activity reports, but it was never emphasized the point where you had federal agents coming in to train us to not only how to find it, but to actively look for it and to be encouraged to pull the trigger. And I think that's what's happening here. And we'll put the employee stuff out of the way. You got the bots, right? Now the bots are the ones that are making those decisions.
And as we've talked with, so many people and just in general, how things are being processed with the government. I have a brother, my brother's relative works with the federal government, and just there's so many people, and even with the Senate committees, they're talking about how many people with COVID are still working from home, and the decreased productivity within the federal government of getting things cleared off the plate and off the shelf. I know that we're just on somebody's desk who hasn't gotten to it yet, or we're in back of the line on some file somewhere that they just haven't gotten to it yet. And and so until they do, we have no way of knowing how to correct or say, oh, that you need this, and this to produce paperwork and verify the income or whatever.
Right.
It's that's what that's ultimately what I feel is that I had a friend who on her taxes somebody claimed her as a dependent, and she was waiting for some of her tax refunds, and she just got a letter 2 years after she filed saying that her funds had been given to somebody else. But that letter came 2 years after she's had somebody else, that she had filed and had a case manager, and yes, your stuff is getting filed, and don't worry about it, it's going to be sent out here and there. And 2 years later, she gets a letter that says, oh, by the way, this got sent out. So I know they're, just being impacted by the amount of work, and these kinds of things are just piling on even more work. I don't think they'll ever process through it.
Well, especially when you consider that next year, by the end of next year alone, there's 36 million LLCs out there.
Yeah.
And they all have to register. And this is going to be a nightmare that's unbelievable.
I don't care if they have 87,000 new IRS agents. There's no way they're going to get through the amount of work they're trying to put on them.
But it's not the IRS here. This is FinCEN.
Yeah.
This is not the IRS. That's the thing. So it's a whole different thing. And because, they're the blinders on, right? They're focusing on money laundering, and they're focusing on, putting up these barriers towards it. And, collateral damage happens, as I said. And there's just so many landmines in what's happening now that people who are doing everything right are still getting the chop. And that's scary. That's really scary. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on today and talking about this. And, for those of you who are watching this or listening to this on my podcast, I want to reemphasize how important it is to research and really decide if you want to swim in these shark-infested waters, or if you want to look for a way to be able to do your business and run your business and invest and make money without being under the spotlight and with a much lesser danger of stuff like this happening. So reach out to me and we can talk about it. So Mike and Jody, thank you very much for coming on to speak with us, and your courage in talking about this. And I think things are going to work out. But right now, it's important to spread the word, and I appreciate you guys, lending your voice to this. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.